Today we're taking a look at a Hollywood status symbol. It's not a Rolls-Royce, it's a G-Wagon, specifically a Mercedes-AMG G63. 577 fire-breathing horsepower and one of the boxiest bodies you can buy brand new in America today. I have to admit, I'm still not quite clear why the G-Wagon has achieved such status in especially Southern California, where they're never going to leave the pavement. And I suspect that probably bewilders some of the German engineers that have worked on this since the 1970s. The original G-Wagon, of course, started out as an actual military vehicle, and since then it has turned into a high-riding luxury vehicle right like this. But it hasn't lost its off-road capability and its off-road intention as far as the core design. This is one of a very limited number of new vehicles you can buy in the US today with a front, a center, and a rear locker, and of course, real off-road capability. Just not this particular one, because if we take a look at the wheels and tires here, we have 295/40 R22s, these absolutely gorgeous AMG wheels here, but they're wrapped in Eagle F1 tires, so these are not exactly an off-road tire. Cross-drilled rotors there, no AMG would be complete without that, and of course, those massive brakes up front. If you wanted to stick smaller wheels and therefore higher profile tires on your G-Wagon, you could, but in a G63, you'd clearly have to swap out those wheels. Now, the boxy proportions in this generation don't limit the interior volume as much as they did in previous generations. So I was barely able to squeeze my daughter's rear-facing infant seat behind the front seat adjusted for me, but we did have to take some time to get there. The bigger thing I noticed, though, when getting people, or especially children, in and out of the back is the cool quad side exhaust tips, because we have two over there. Don't worry, the engine's not smoking. It's actually pretty chilly out here this morning. And then we have the other two puffing along right over here. Definitely a cool look, but they kind of remind me of the Dodge Viper, where sometimes they're just a little bit close to your ankles as you're getting in and out of the vehicle. Now, back here in the rear, we have the same tire size, 295/40 R22s, basically the same wheel, and a slightly smaller brake caliper in the back. Continuing all the way around to the rear, of course, spare tire hanging off the back. And one thing I've noticed in the G-Wagon for a while here is that the cargo area, even though we have a really big square opening, it's not as big as you might suspect, but it's really finished very nicely back here. Leather panels on that fifth door, carpet all the way around, carpet on the floor, decent amount of room, and very, very upright and boxy. Now, if I were to come over here to this side of my driveway where I have my sort of imitation G-Wagon hanging out, the Grenadier, you'll notice that we do have a bigger and wider cargo area. Sorry, we have been doing some things here at home, so it's full of stuff at the moment. But we do have that bigger, more practical cargo opening here, but we also have that same classic design and, of course, 3 lockers there as well. If you want to know more about how the Grenadier stacks up against the G-Wagon, check out our comparison video. That's already on the channel. But back to this bad boy, let's check out some of the other features that we find, starting with the door handles. I'm actually going to turn this off so that we can lock it and unlock it. Trust me, we'll get to the interior in just a moment. But listen to that sound. There's just something so satisfying about the way a G-Wagon's doors open and close. And it has to do not just with the heft of the door, but actually the door latch mechanism. This is very different from really any other modern car's door latch, whether we take a look at that side or the side on the door. And that's part of what gives it that satisfying click, and also the fact that you really just have to want to close that door. You can't just, limp wrist that thing in there, I guess, for lack of a better term. But listen to this click. Oh, there's just something so satisfying about that, as well as the click when you open and close it. Something so good about that. And all 5 doors do the same thing. Yep, even the one back here uses that exact same latch mechanism. And just in case you're wondering, since I did not compare this in the Grenadier video, let's take a listen to these latches. You probably didn't hear anything because despite looking quite like the latches on that G-Wagon, they don't function or operate anywhere near the same. This is much more of a classic, regular new car latch. You can see the opposing latch there on the inside, so nothing like the one that we find in the G-Wagon. Of course, the one area in the G-Wagon that isn't quite as old school as it used to be is the front suspension design, which is no longer a solid axle. We actually have an independent front now. I can't really blame Mercedes because the likelihood of this ever leaving the pavement is pretty low until it's on its 5th or maybe 6th owner, but we still have the solid axle in the back and again, the 3 lockers all the way around. Now let's check out what's under the hood because that is definitely not old school either. Interestingly, the hood itself is not that old school either. It's actually aluminum. Under here we have a 4-liter twin-turbo V8 producing 577 horsepower, nearly 630 pound-feet of torque, mated of course to that standard 4-wheel drive system and a 9-speed automatic transmission. We also have a mild hybrid system under this hood, although it's not really here for fuel economy because fuel economy is still in the low teens in average driving. The engine is definitely shoehorned under here, but one of the things that they did when they redesigned the G-Wagon completely was they made the engine compartment wider and a bit bigger, which is why the proportions are slightly different versus that pre-redesigned G-Wagon, in order to fit the AMG engine lineup under the hood. So this certainly fits a lot better under here, and there's more provision for cooling, something that previous versions of the G-Wagon with the AMG engine lineup definitely struggled with. You know, there is still a lot of engine for a hood this size, mind you, but definitely better than before. Now let's start checking out the interior. We have a full leather wrap on the door panels, definitely a more premium feel than we had in the sort of industrial G-Wagon that came before this. Seat controls over here on the door, along with the seat memory controls, buttons for the heating and ventilation, window switches, mirror controls up there, all that jazz. You'll notice that the dashboard is leather wrapped as well, and that leather wrapping goes all the way down here to the carpeted section. We do have one hard plastic piece right there, but you're not going to see that when you're inside the vehicle. That definitely gives this a much more premium vibe than the previous generation of the G-Wagon. Sorry, I have to reclose that door because apparently I didn't want it hard enough. Let's start this up. You can hear the engine sound still really nice inside. It has that just lovely, lovely V8 burble going on there. No visible screw heads or anything like that going on in this interior anymore. That was kind of a hallmark of the G-Wagon in the past, but you can see the ambient lighting strip that's integrated right there. Big grab handle, of course, right there on the dashboard for off-roading. Air vents that are very similar to the rest of the modern Mercedes lineup where you twirl them around like that. It's kind of a turbine design to them. Of course, we have the off-road buttons here. These are the important ones. The off-road cockpit button takes us over to the MBUX software for off-roading up there. So you can see your steering angle, your elevation, some engine data. We're warming up right now. You can see your position, your active suspension. This has a hydraulic active suspension that is really pretty cool. It can adjust each wheel's independent height. It can also adjust for body roll, tip and dive. So this has a very strangely level feel out on the road that we're going to experience when we get this out there. Then we have the lockers here. You'll notice we have some numbers on them because this is how they want you to lock them in order. So if I put this in drive, we're going to lock the center differential there, and then we're going to lock the rear differential with that button, and then if that doesn't help you out enough, then we lock this one right here. Now they're flashing because lock conditions have not been met. So what we first need to do, of course, is we're going to go to neutral here, and then we're going to engage the low range mode. Now that low range is on, we're going to put it back into drive. Then we're going to activate the trail drive program up here in MBUX. And you'll notice down here, we have the center differential asked to be locked and confirmed that it is locked. We can then lock the rear, and we'll get confirmation up there when that happens. And then we can lock the front as well. Now, if we drive for a little bit, it will take a while before everything is fully locked. Let's see how long this actually takes. There we go. The rear has locked itself. Still driving along. There we go. Now the front is locked. And you deactivate them in the same pattern. So turn off the front locker right there. It's still locked, still locked. We got to drive a little bit longer. We can then ask for the rear differential to get unlocked. You can see that those have progressively unlocked, but the center, that's still locked right there. Under those off-road buttons, we have physical controls for the climate control system. We have a sort of roller style cover here over a Qi wireless charging mat, USB charge ports. We also have some cup holders that heat and cool your drink. We have a touchpad controller for the MBUX system along with some direct access buttons, very similar to what we find in other Mercedes models. Also similar to other Mercedes models is this bifold opening storage area. It's deeper than I had suspected for a four-wheel drive vehicle, and that's where you find the USB interface port that actually works with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Moving over to the seats, this is a very modern Mercedes seat design, similar to what you'll find in other Mercedes models. We have the butterfly headrests right there. a manual button to move them in and out. Sorry, it's a little bit difficult to do that while holding the camera. And then the up-down motion is powered. These also feature their inflating bolsters that grab you when you're in the corners, and massage, of course, in addition to heating, ventilation, all that. Height adjustable shoulder belts right over there. Leather wrapping on, again, the entire dashboard, including the glove compartment over there. It's a pretty tiny glove compartment, if I'm honest. There's a little change holder right there, but it's a pretty small glove compartment, all things considered. Again, that big screen right up here on the dashboard, it does support Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. It's the same basic software we find in other Mercedes models. If we go over here to the comfort section, that's where we're going to find adjustments for the seat, like lumbar support. This is kind of funny. I've always loved the way Mercedes does this with this little display, so you can actually see exactly how your lumbar is going to get shaped in the seat, or your lumbar support. And then we have the big full LCD instrument cluster over here with adjustable software. So there are a bunch of different themes you can choose. There's a classic theme, there's a sport theme, super sport, the track pace theme, which is kind of funny for something this tall. And then of course you can get a navigation map view if you'd rather have full screen mapping as well. The steering column, that is powered, of course, and it uses a very sporty design similar to other Mercedes models. I'm not quite sure whether that goes with the off-road theme of the G-Wagon, but it is definitely a sporty wheel. Alcantara wrapping happens on the side with those big meaty sport grips there. We then find carbon fiber on the top and carbon fiber on the bottom. We have the same button modules that we find in other AMG models, where we actually click the button here to change what the button is going to do for us, and then to activate that particular option is this little toggle right below it. Then we have the drive mode selector over there on that side, some infotainment buttons, and then touch controls for the infotainment screen and touch controls for the multifunction instrument cluster. All right, let's get strapped in and get the G-Wagon out on the road so we can find out why this is so epic. Now, again, this is as off-roady as we're gonna get because we have summer tires in this model, so it's not exactly the right kind of vehicle for our usual trail. Also, I don't want to get this truly expensive paint job scratched. So we're just gonna make a right turn at my excavator and continue on down the road. One of the best things about the G-Wagon is its ride quality. Even with the 22s that we have on here, the hydraulic suspension system is all kinds of fantastic. It soaks up big bumps, small bumps really well, and it keeps the body strangely level. Now, what I mean by strangely level is that this has an unusual feel. I can wiggle the steering wheel here, and it's hard to tell on camera, but the hood is barely moving along. I can hit the brakes, I can accelerate. Again, the vehicle barely tips, barely dives, because the suspension is able to compensate for that and predict it, stop it in its tracks, that unwanted body motion. It has almost a disconcerting feel the first time you get behind the wheel, and it can lull you into a little bit of a false sense of security because it's not like the G-Wagon handles exactly that well. We'll get to that in a moment though. But there's something about the suspension tuning that makes you feel invincible in the G-Wagon. Whether you're on a road like this or you're trying to hop the curb at the mall, this feels like it can tackle any obstacle. Again, bearing in mind the summer tires, we're not going to try that. Instead, let's give the pedals a whirl. 0 to 60, thanks to that 9-speed automatic transmission, 3.7 seconds. And you'll notice that the vehicle does kind of torque steer just a little bit, or some kind of steer. It doesn't just go in a straight line. And that just has to do with the sheer amount of power and torque we get here and the full-time four-wheel drive system as well. It really gets going insanely fast. And shockingly, but likely thanks to those tires, it stops pretty quickly as well. I measured 118 feet from 60 to 0, and I'd honestly expected it to be an awful lot longer. But again, Eagle F1 tires, cross-drilled rotors, absolutely massive, massive calipers and pads on here. That leads to that short stopping distance and a reasonable amount of fade prevention as well. You can drive this surprisingly hard out on your favorite winding mountain road. Just don't get too hard, because actual grip levels are really not that good because it's pretty high off the ground, and even though those tires seem pretty nice, they're not as wide as you think they should be for something that weighs this much, is this tall, etc. But the adaptive suspension system really gives this, again, a peculiar feel out on the road. You can wiggle the steering wheel here. The body is really, really stable. We get very little body motion out of this vehicle, and that's kind of why it's easy to live with. It's very comfortable. Out on a road like this, it feels very capable as well, although you'll definitely hear those tires start to squeal earlier than in something like a GLE or a GLS. Intriguingly, the history of the G-Wagon is that it was actually supposed to be replaced by the original GL, which turned into the GLS, but customers said, hey, don't take away our G-Wagon, that's not a G-Wagon replacement. So Mercedes said, I guess we'll keep doing it, and maybe we'll even make another generation. And that's how we ended up right here with this absolutely insane piece of engineering. As far as ride quality goes, I'm going to give this an A. Handling ability, clearly we're going to have to drop that down to, I don't know, C+, B-, something like that, because you could be cross-shopping this, certainly price-wise, with an X5M, GLE AMG, or a whole host of other vehicles out there that are in this same price range but are going to handle significantly better than this. They're just not going to have the kind of off-road capability that this would have if you changed out some of those factory bits. The other thing that's definitely more luxury car in this generation of G-Wagon is the cabin quietness. Even though we have those summer tires on here, and of course we have a lot of ground clearance, etc., that big burbly V8 under the hood, we measured 62.5 decibels in here at 50 miles an hour. Relatively quiet, not as quiet as, again, some of those unibody luxury vehicles with even wider tires, but given what this is and the fact that we have this really blunt front end, it's still very quiet even at 70, 75 miles an hour. It has much less wind noise than previous generations of the G-Wagon. And of course it has that fantastic V8 sound. It is just so ridiculously stupid to drive. There's something just so fun about a vehicle that shouldn't go this fast that absolutely does go this fast 0 to 60. And according to Mercedes, this is actually quicker than the G580, the electric version of this, which is also kind of funny. You would normally assume that the electric version of any vehicle would be the quickest 0 to 60, and Mercedes said, no, slow your roll, we're not going to do that in the G-Wagon. The gas model is still going to be the quickest 0 to 60. It's also the thirstiest 0 to 60, well, thirstiest all the way around. We've been averaging 13.8 miles per gallon over a week of mixed driving. Even trying to drive this more gently, you know, our fuel economy has still been pretty darn low. But what do you expect from 577 horsepower under the hood and a vehicle that's shaped like a brick? As you probably already suspected, the rest of the experience in the G-Wagon is luxury car typical. I can go ahead and have my seat kinetics here. I can have my seat massage. Let's go for a wave massage over here. We have the ambient lighting. We have all the latest in the Mercedes doodaddery, including the Burmester audio system, which is absolutely fantastic. So you can, of course, listen to the Auto Buyer's Guide podcast. I don't want to actually listen to myself in the car, but you guys can listen to the Auto Buyer's Guide podcast while you are in your not G-Wagon, not getting a massage, not getting perfume wafted out of the air vents. And I won't be doing that tomorrow anyway, because this is going back to Mercedes. So anyway, let me know what you guys think about all that down there in the comments section below. Is there any interest, is there any attraction to the kind of insanity that we find in the G-Wagon? Or is it all too, I don't know, a little bit Los Angeles for you? And I have to admit, being a Northern California person, that is one of the problems for me with the G-Wagon, is that it does seem, I don't know, a little LA. So really, what is there to say about the G-Wagon? It's absolutely bonkers, and its price tag is even more bonkers. This starts over $180,000. This particular model, $231,000 as equipped. And yep, you can get them basically up to $250,000 if you're interested. But you're not really going to find anything else quite like this. You are going to find something like that Ineos Grenadier, which is immensely off-road capable, honestly more off-road capable than this G-Wagon as we see it here. But with the right equipment, this could be as capable as any SUV that we find in America. You just have to spend an awful lot of money on it, of course. And that's really what the G-Wagon is about, of course. It's about that conspicuous consumption. And it doesn't get too much more conspicuous than this particular model, especially in the forest here, where it doesn't exactly belong. And that's mainly because I'm scared to death of scratching it or getting it stuck, which is why this is as much off-roading as we have done with it. Just in case you're wondering what 50,000 gallons of water storage looks like, that's what it looks like over there. We put those in to service our fire hydrants that we also added. Anyway, back to the G-Wagon here. It's insane. Do you want one? Let me know down there in the comments section. I have to admit, I kind of want one. I do love our Grenadier because It's kind of the imitation G-Wagon. It has a lot of the same presence. It has, you know, rarity, which we don't see in the G-Wagon necessarily anymore because it has become oddly popular in the Mercedes lineup. But it's not a G-Wagon. It doesn't look like this. It doesn't drive like this. It doesn't have the presence and the baller attitude of this. Is that good? Is that bad? Let me know down there in the comment section below. And of course, check out our video on the G-Wagon Electric, the G580, where we take a deeper dive into the G-Wagon in our typical format and of course compare it very directly to that Grenadier in my driveway. See all of you later.